Hello everyone and welcome to Bachocolio Streams. As usual, I am Bachocolio and today we will continue to paint our Blood Bowl minis. How is everyone doing today? I have to say that where I live it's been a pretty hot summer, which I usually enjoy. Though for these streams I do have to make a bit of an air current so that my computer does not melt down. I haven't been able to make any progress on these guys since our last stream, so I will exclusively be working on them. As I always mention, they will be my team for the upcoming World Cup in Blood Bowl, which will be in October, so I have to paint these two guys and a couple more before October. I'll see if I can do it with one stream per week. If not, I might just get a few bonus streams of painting in, or I'll just advance a bit off camera. Although my painting station is placed on my computer, so sitting down to paint and not turning on the cam, well, doesn't make much sense. Aside from that, things appear to be proceeding as usual. I have received some feedback on the secondary game that I will be streaming. I will give it a couple more shots, and if it starts to get too slow for me to go through the levels of the Surge, I might discontinue it if no one really cares about watching it. But we'll see. I will give it a couple more shots to see how it goes. If you see me looking over my shoulder constantly, it's just that there is a clock just behind me over the TV. You can't see it on the cam because it's just over the border, so this is essentially what I'm doing. I still haven't built up the habit of looking at my phone. I'll just give a few more moments for everyone to come along and then we will get started. A few words on topics and news that I may repeat later down the line today. Yesterday we had a small local tournament of Blood Bowl 7s. It was great fun, I have to say. I had a blast. It was fun, it was quicker and lighter than classic Blood Bowl. We were able to get in 4 games with decent breaks intermittently, and it took us about 8 hours, I think, with the winnings and the trophies and the whole shebang, which is unheard of in our small group. It was very nice, much enjoyed by everyone. And this time there were, again, 6 of us. For some reason we just can't break out of this number. It's a decent number, I say. Less than that, and there will be buy-ins or something along those lines, which isn't really fun, or skip rounds. It would be fun to get more people involved, but it's very, very hard to popularize game in my country, which is why I am reaching out into Twitch to share more along the lines of what I'm doing hobby-wise, and also to keep myself motivated to go through with all of these extra hobby bits that comprise the entirety of the hobby. I have made a few small adjustments to the camera and the location of my palette so you can see it better. What else? I've raised it just a little bit with a plank of wood. It's also a bit more balanced. The other one had a bit of a bevel that made the water of the wet palette sometimes splash out. So this is going to be keeping it stable. I also have easier access to the keyboard. I would generally call that an improvement. Unfortunately, I still just can't get the exposure of this cam to work right, so I've had to tweak the brightness so that the white primer doesn't poke your eyes out during the stream. But for whatever reason, every time, even though I set the correct frequency for the anti-flickering, the second I turn on manual exposure and lower it down so that you can actually see the details of the models, it just goes crazy flickery, and it should probably be very painful for you to watch. This is an ongoing problem still, and I will need to look into it in more detail. I read some forums about it, and the most I could get out of it is simply that the C922 just has that problem. For some reason, Logitech's drivers just go a bit crazy every now and again, and this is just not controllable. Which is strange, because when I initially set the exposure to manual and tweak it down to the preferred level, it stays pretty consistent for 5 to 10 minutes, and after that, even if I'm not running the stream or the recording, it just goes haywire and starts to flicker all over the place. Quite weird. But I don't know if I can fix it. I did connect the cam to a USB 2 slot, but I haven't noticed any significant change in performance. Either way, I will be addressing this topic further down the line as well. Or worst case scenario, I'll just switch to a dark gray primer, or maybe brown. I'd like to avoid black if at all possible. I might just go back to gray. And this is pretty much the first time I'm using white primer. I'm pretty happy with it in terms of how it works, but if it gives my stream issues, I will switch back to gray. For priming, I've recently gone all the way back to spray cans, to rattle cans for spraying, just a lot faster. And now that my airbrush is busted and I really don't have any reason to get it working again, like, I fiddled with it, but obviously there has to be a fuse blown or some issue with the overheating. And I think that this cheapo compressor has had enough torture from me. I do mostly paint by brush anyway, it just helps me keep up in the rhythm, in my own rhythm for hobbying. I don't really like the loudness of the airbrush or the time constraints that it puts on me every time that I have to switch a color or clean it out. I'm not using it overly. Anyway. And now that we've got the introductory rambling out of the way, I think I'm going to dive right into the painting part. And I will clean my brush because it is again somehow filthy. Also, I am now keeping the chat box. Sorry. I'm keeping the chat on my other monitor, so whenever I have a screenshot to show you, you won't need to see the whole chat, or I minimize it. Also, hoping that raising my work surface a little bit will help out my back and I would not feel as tired or exhausted. So last time what we did was to reach all the way up to the brown, so that is effectively 2, 3, 4 colors put down on this guy, and we will need to even this out with the Ulfwerner. For some reason I always have problems with the pronunciation of this, especially on stream. I don't know why. I had gotten it down on day to day, and then as I turned the cam on and the mic on, my ability to pronounce this specific word just goes to shit. Yeah, so I will be painting his fur. Apologies. I will be painting his fur brown as a base color. I will also paint the leather straps of the same color, but then I will be doing some tricks here and there to get more variety in terms of tone. So for now we'll just be using the Mornfang brown base. I should really get some mahogany in my range, as I also intend to paint quite a bit of red, and mahogany will be a good foundation to build up from into reds. And I can always use it for the leather straps and so on, wherever a bit of diversity is needed. I'll just lay down the brown right over here. As usual, I pick the paint from the pot with a heavily wet brush, so when I mix it on the palette, I can start straight off. This sounded a bit shushy, but Now I don't have my cheat plank of cardboard to help me identify if I am in frame. So if I start wobbling out of frame, please let me know. I do take regular looks at the OBS screen to make sure no catastrophes have happened, but just in case, I am going to put this into your watchful eyes as well. Ever vigilant. Just to give you an example of why my current painting accommodations aren't ideal, my elbows are actually resting on my knees to get stability, so I can get the cam to work properly. This will be an ongoing process as well, trying to find suitably comfortable painting position. But yeah, can't get everything right the first time. I prefer to be getting some content out rather than to have it completely perfect. So I'm going to have to ask for your forgiveness in terms of these growing pains. You could say that I'm at the monkey stage of being a streamer, in that I mostly just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. Just open the can of whatever I would find kind of interesting to do, that I would have any consistency of it if you were to find it entertaining, and I try to implement it on camera. I sort of feel that the Surge experiment may have been a mistake. Also, I did not take into account how much OBS is actually causing system burn. And while not being a resource hog, the Surge was barely running well on my system without any extra software. And when I turned OBS and started streaming it, the frame rate was, the least to say, abysmal. Like, it had actual gameplay. It affected my gameplay. And while I was able to usually maybe twice or 3 times kill the first boss in my initial run, no deaths, a combination of having gotten rusty at the game and fighting with a choppy frame rate led to an unnecessary repetition of this fight. So now I have corrected significantly the quality of the game, so it would look uglier, but it should run better. And while not ideal, this will be the situation to work with. That being said, I've had a few suggestions to engage in some multiplayer for game streaming purposes. The word Borderlands 2 was thrown around quite a few times. So this will be something that we can dabble into, although it would have to substitute the Surge. Since considering my day job and other responsibilities, it would be hard to just straight up add another streaming session to the week, and I do not intend to substitute the build and paint streams. Although for the upcoming few weeks I might have a slot open, since the Blood Bowl Rebel League is currently in its playoffs, and for us regular coaches who couldn't qualify, there is a few weeks of off season to recuperate and prepare, and they haven't yet launched the cripple ladder. Excuse me. So unless I get some other types of Blood Bowl related streams, such as testing out builds for the World Cup, or helping one of my friends in the group test out their new teams, I might have an opening to fill out for an additional game until the regular season 12 starts. Again, I'm going to pretty much wing it all around. And I am actively making more work for myself as I hurry to get the brush where I want it to. As a result, I am getting color all over the place where I didn't exactly want it to be, which is always great in inverted commas. Still though, nothing a few little touch-ups cannot fix. Hopefully I will remember where they should be by the time I get to that stage. Although if history is anything to go by, I have historically not remembered where I have to do any touch-ups, and I am way too lazy to do it straight away. Which is something that I probably should start doing. I don't know. As you can see, I'm using pretty well Diluted paint. More than I should have it diluted, considering I'm just blocking in colors, but this is just a habit I have already built, and I just feel more comfortable with it. And if words would stop disappearing from my head or coming up all mixed up from my mouth, it would just be fantastic. I also realized that I may have gone into mumble mode, but I have the mic fairly close to me, so the words should come out rather audible. If not, again, please correct me while there is still time to make the necessary corrections. This is seriously not the most comfortable position for me to paint. But thankfully I will not need to paint all of these details, aside from giving them some washes and dry brushes, particularly for the fur. On the cloth I will do some manual brushwork, although it will be heavily shaded as well. Trying to rinse off my brush of any paint that has managed to dry on it. I will just raise my hair the tiniest little bit. Try and see if that wouldn't affect things in any way. Nope, I am still slouching. Just can't imagine what I could do to improve my comfort levels while painting with a camera in front of my face. The obvious answer, of course, being just get a better camera with more zoom that wouldn't distort the picture. Raise it up or put it on the side, put lights that are not again in front of your face as they are right now. Probably at some point, but for now I'm going to try and make do with what I already have. Still just basically applying layer after layer. Well, two to be completely honest. Considering the amount of shade that is going to go over, I'm not overly concerned. Especially considering that the fur actually gets some segmentation of the strands, you would like to call them that, if the base coat is not 100% creamy with perfect coverage. So, for all intents and purposes, will actually contribute to the end, the overall effect at the end. Alright. So before I forget, I'm also going to paint the rock-like thing that he is jumping off from. This is a bit weird to be kind of a mound. It's a bit weird to be on a Blood Bowl turf, but it does work. From a pragmatic standpoint, it does give a very solid foundation, and I don't have the usual worry that the model would snap off of the base or break somewhere at the joints. Overall, I approve of this design decision, even though it is not the most cohesive. After all, I am willing to swallow a bit of thematic inconsistency if it works out in favor of my miniature being not broken for longer. I believe that some of my neighbors are currently cooking, and as I have all the windows open, I have a gust of aroma. I think it's barbecue, and it's kind of making me salivate a bit. Not really sure how I feel about it. Could have eaten more before I got on stream, but I'm trying to get into a tiniest bit of shape since my season of teaching karate will begin in a few months. I just want to make my life a bit easier by then, and naturally for the aesthetics as well. So, given. But following another rather crazy day at work where I was unable to eat lunch, being focused on what I was doing, considering somewhat tight deadlines, I just didn't feel to have the energy for physical exertion. I probably could have pushed myself, well, bar that. I could have definitely pushed myself. When you don't feel like it, you don't feel like it, and that is that. By the way, I am still running the rock station on Pretzel, which is the streaming application for copyright-free music. However, if you feel that this is annoying you in any way, since there are some rougher tracks, such as the one that's currently being played, it makes you feel uncomfortable, because I know that it may not appeal to much of a wide audience. I wouldn't mind changing it, however, I kinda like it, so until you actually express a desire to listen to something else, I will just keep it up and going. Not really making much headway in this painting here. So something I have been wondering about today. I think that for the streams I won't be doing such semi-batch painting jobs as I am usually doing, as in I won't be painting 2 minis at a time. I will just prime them both at a time, but I will be painting them one by one, simply because otherwise it just appears to take forever to get a single piece done. Oh, it kind of does. Your perception of it will be a bit more favorable. So you would see more development, more progression in the overall readiness of the miniature, rather than me just going, well, this stream I'm going to paint brown, but not highlighted brown, just base brown on a couple of miniatures. That of course being the case because I paint notoriously slow. That does not mean that I paint good, just slow. And one of the reasons why I'm painting slow is that I am using painting to re-establish my natural tempo meter, biological, emotional, whatever. Let's just say that it is a form of meditation to wind down the overall speed of the day. Yeah. I have been categorized as a phlegmatic type of character, of personality. And to tell you the truth, I kind of believe that. I do appear to function better under a less dynamic circumstances. I do have my spurts of speed, of more dynamic sort of activity. Overall, those are rare. I'm more likely to just chill out, relax, and actually try and take pleasure in what I'm doing, because aside from the fact that I'm streaming it, why else would I be doing it at all unless I actually enjoyed it? And I do. It unwinds me, it takes my mind off of daily stuff that I currently do not have much control over, so, or at least at this part of the day. So instead of sitting around in the corner and contemplating things that I currently can't do anything about, I prefer to put some paint on some plastic. In this case, a finely sculpted piece of plastic to boot. Neat, huh? In case anyone is actually on the stream right now and you do paint, please let me know if, or in the comments on YouTube, let me know what drives you to paint. As there have been a billion discussions for why you don't paint, I would like to hear about why you do paint. Is it just to get some paint on models so you can play with them? Is it because you enjoy the artistic expression side of it? Is it because you're using it as a bit of a meditation and escape from the usual day stuff? I honestly would like to know what drives you to pick up a brush or airbrush. So there are many possible reasons for that. And if you tell me, then I might possibly be able to tailor and tweak the streams so that they would appeal to you more. Knowing what you would like to have more emphasis on. Is it the mistakes that I've been making previously, things that I've learned, things that I still commit as grievous errors, what I want to learn, what I want to strive for in my painting? All of that covers separate topics that can be covered quite in detail, quite extensively, and quite long. Maybe even up to the level of a series of streams or so on. Again, please let me know. Any piece of feedback is well appreciated, and while I would prefer to avoid most of the unpleasant trolling or whatever you want to call it, truth of the matter is I We'll try to find the constructive aspect of it and base any foreseeable changes on it. Oh yeah. While it might sound like a plea, well, technically it kind of is, so talk to me, let me know. Most of our discussions on this channel have been because most of my viewers are from my local gaming group. And so thematically it is around games that we are playing or are going to play or would like to do or see or stuff like that. But while not a particularly pronounced ambition, I would like to expand my viewership and I would like to include more general, more global topics that more of you might find interesting. Because as much of a curio as it is just to know what my local meta in terms of board gaming is like, it is by far not necessarily the most interesting or the single interesting thing to listen to as I do whatever it is that I'm doing on any particular stream. That being said, another bit of interesting curio that I don't think I have touched on much on my streams is that the gaming community where I live is very young in general, so not counting more or less particular individuals, so not as much as a community, just a few people from here and there that may have found each other to play with. So the concept of a gaming community is pretty young here. And so it might be interesting for you to hear how such a community is developing. What are the hurdles that we have had to go through? How we are reacting to the recent burst of popularization of video games as well, but mostly board games. Streaming and so on. Also, I believe that in maybe a couple of streams I will also have a functionally built Necromunda gang from House Goliath, which means that I will embark on a journey to try and get another rather complex rule game under my belt in my ongoing gaming systems. So you will be hearing some feedback from my side. I have been watching whatever battle reports I can get my hands on, particularly in the Gang Wars expansion, because it is obvious that the basic rules are probably not played as much or at all Problem is that I cannot find more in-depth battle reports made by experienced Necromunda players. I'm just going to give this as an example, and I mean absolutely no offense by saying this, but I have watched the battle reports from Mini Wargaming, which is an awesome site, an awesome channel on YouTube as well, that so they have covered Necromunda both in basic rulebook and in Gang Wars, with the addition of some legacy gangs. But before, I have also watched their take on Blood Bowl, and as I am somewhat adequate at Blood Bowl, although might not really seem like it most of the time, I generally have an idea of what's happening. So if the way they played Blood Bowl is the same in-depth level that they played Necromunda, since I can't judge for Necromunda, then that means that I am not getting most of what this game has as a potential. So if anyone can direct me in any place at all, be it YouTube or internet in general, some website or Twitch, any source of in-depth battle reports on Necromunda made by experienced Necromunda players, I would be ever so grateful. I just want to see what it really holds under its belt. That being said, I did sincerely enjoy the battle reports by Mini Wargaming, and as they did with Blood Bowl, it is sufficient to identify the main rules and the variety of actions that you can do in the game. So it is a good introduction in the variety and in the flexibility of the game. And I liked it. I did. The basic rules gave me some mixed feelings. However, the Gang Wars I thoroughly did enjoy. There are some things that look a bit weird to me, but they are few and far between. Nothing I won't be able to stomach or chew through. But yeah, small skirmishes with multiple actions sound fun. I am not used to alternating activations in games, but it would be as good a time as any to actually get introduced to it. Alright, and let's take the tiniest ever break just to move my body around, keep limber, keep hydrated in the heat, and of course ruin my health with another Coke. I wonder if anyone would show up today. apparently I did have quite a bit to ramble on about, so I believe I should have fairly decent amount of ramble and rant in me still to come. So I would be able to probably carry out a stream without too much dead air, just spurting whatever comes to my head. Still, it'd be more fun if any of you guys would tag along, say hello, tell me what you're working on, what you would like to be working on, or what you're playing, either on tabletop or in the virtual world. I'm being seriously sloppy with this paint job here. Especially in terms of the gray. I also noticed that I didn't cover the rim that shows over his belt. If you would take a look, there is a bit of the cloth that is caught upward from the belt. I naturally forgot to paint that, so I will be going back in the touch-up space to repaint it. You can pretty much hear what painting in an uncomfortable position leads to. Lots of crackling. What else coming up soon? Oh yeah, so again, in our local league is going to start. It would be season 4, I believe, and I will be bringing back my second season, well, my Dark Elves for the second season in a row. See how we do there. It will be just me and one more person who has actually transferred teams from the previous season, everyone else playing fresh teams. I won't be pushing it after this season. I will probably retire the Dark Elves from the league, and I will probably give these Norse guys a try. Or if I manage to paint up another team, I would use it. We'll see how it goes. I am pretty excited about it, and I am a bit worried about the scheduling. As with the streams, I am running out of free days, but hopefully I'll be able to get in a game per week. I was hoping to get the first game done during this week. However, my opponent will be out of the town, out of city for practices. Means it will probably remain for next week. Probably somewhere at the start, so I will let you know which day it will be, but that day I won't be able to stream, as the time for streaming will be taken over by a tabletop league game of Blood Bowl. On the musical front, I found out that next week there will be a Combi Christ concert very near where I live, not just in terms of towns, but roughly 5 minutes from where I live, so it would be silly not to go. They have come here on several occasions, and I have so far missed all of them, so I think it's way overdue that I would attend a concert of theirs. My only worry is that it'll be on a Wednesday, which is well, as much of a working day as you get, pretty much smack down the middle. But with some self-control and restraint, I should make it out sufficiently fresh for another work day, well, another couple. I am interested to see them live. I've heard quite a bit of them. I have enjoyed their soundtrack at DMC, and yes, while being a controversial game for many, I actually enjoyed it. I played it and beat it once by myself. No, directly with my girlfriend, so we were taking turns to play. And we beat the game. And we had a decent amount of fun with it. It felt more toward the Western type of character action games. I also happen to like those, so that was no gripe with me. I do enjoy the standard DMCs as well, Devil May Cry's. I've played 4, I've played 3, and I am waiting for a decent sale so I can get 5 as well. Also, I would like to, since I've already seen a playthrough of it, because I just was, well, impatient. So I would like to let it air out of my brain, so not to have it pretty fresh, so I wouldn't really know what to do, where to do it, and so on. And would have as close to blind experience playing it as possible. And of course, if my rig would bother to get it running. For it is starting to seriously chug. And I, for the life of me, can't figure out why, because it is quite beefy. It is pretty old, but I have maintained it, and it keeps up on paper. It should keep up to this very day. I shouldn't have much or even any issues running modern games on it. For some reason that is not the case. And I feel the reason is that there are too many background processes eating away at my available resource. Also, there might be a bit of an incompatibility, or at least not well maintained compatibility of some of the hardware components of the build. I haven't done it myself, and the people that did do it are very experienced and very proficient at what they do. But still, it just feels the tiniest bit off. And I'm totally not ready yet to go for an upgrade. It's very overclockable. Most of its components lend themselves to overclocking pretty decently. I would like to wait until I would be ready to replace it before going all in with the overclocking and just render it into a pile of steaming melted garbage. Up until that point, I will just let the optimal settings run. The range of styles covered by this station is amazing. But where else would you hear Ed Sheeran-like music alternating to some pretty juicy death metal? Keep it fresh though, yeah? Oh, and my hands are lovely trembling. I may have overdone it with the coffees today. I tend to get a bit over caffeinated during the day. So when I go home, I usually have a bit of a crash from caffeine withdrawal. And we do have decaf at the office. And I just forget to drink more decaf and leave the more potent coffees for the morning and possibly once after I eat lunch to avoid getting drowsy. But instead I just smack them all around. Hard coffee all the time. Alright, so just probably one more layer and we will get the arms done, and then it's smooth sailing to some pretty large surfaces that will cover up easily, nicely, and most of all, quickly. Following that, I will probably go to the next biggest color, which is blue. Paint up the blue bits. And then some separate colors and the ever-dreaded metallics. I'm not good enough to paint non-metallic metal. I haven't tried it. I haven't tested it anywhere. So I will be using true metallics here as well. Unfortunately, I'm using the GW ones, and I will never get tired of bashing on them. They are just not good. Just not good paints. I should get the Vallejo range, at least for the metallics. Heard good things about them. Either them or the scale 75. Just to save myself some pain. Although I have quite a few of the Citadel metallics and it will just be a waste not to use them. From a budgeting standpoint. I already have a redundant paint line that I have discarded from use. Although to be honest, I did ruin it with lead agitators. Please, anyone who is considering to buy agitators for their paints, do not buy lead agitators. They murder paint. What's this then? There that goes. Oh, this is a fun song, what is it? Resistance by Miracle of Sound. They sound fun. How do you feel about TV shows? Like old school sitcoms and the like? Because I had, probably similar to most of you, periods where I am just extremely hooked on them. The sillier the better, the more episodes and seasons also the better. I have actually seen Friends twice in its entirety. Might not be a lot for some people, but to some it might be. I have seen... well, there's no use listing them all. But what came to mind and what prompted me to change the theme and the subject to this was Coupling, which is a British sitcom that works off of a lot of the Friends formulas, but in a British context. And I have to say that some of the points they raise, they hammer home pretty damn well. In quite a few ways better than Friends. It is also a rather short TV series, and I believe that it ends right where it should, before The screenplay runs dry before the content gets sloppy. They managed to keep it fresh for as long as they did, and when they didn't feel like it, it just ended. And I feel it did so at the right time. It said what it needed to say, and it went away. And I like series like that because you get a better feeling afterwards. Completely on the opposite spectrum, you have that 70s show which ran extremely dry after a few seasons, and the final couple of seasons were just a drag to go through. But if you have already committed so many hours to watching the same thing, going along with the characters and whatnot, you just had to push that little mile to get it done and done. But yeah, it was not fun for the last couple of seasons. It was just, come on, just let it end already. There's nothing new that can happen. Well, new, I say. I mean, interesting. More often than not, people will think of new stuff to enter, but to the detriment of the series. Fringe being a very good example of that. When they introduced the alternate dimension, they essentially just convoluted the story to such an extent that it made it painful to watch. I just couldn't. And I stopped. That, however, happened about fourth season, whereas in that 70s show you felt the strain quite later down the line, and it was too late to just back out. So we got these guys' arms done, and so now we have chest, back, and hair. Didn't take too long, just an hour and a half into the stream, I believe. Is it? Yeah, just about. So I am fairly confident that I will get to the blue. Maybe not too far into the blue, but I will start it. Get at least a couple of brush strokes of blue into the whole thing. So on the shin guards and greaves? Are those greaves or armbands? Pardon my English, in case I am getting these wrong. But as I mellow out in mood, my brain tends to go somewhat mushy along as well. Go on then, there we go. Would appear that, yeah, just as I was talking about the variety of this music channel, I think it gave us some juicy examples of that. The band is called Eye of I. There is a bit of a wordplay here, but One of these puns that you just hear, understand, and decide not to acknowledge, I think. And this is purely there for idea of the pun instead of implementing it. Regardless, they sound good. Yeah. The world is moving on. That is a most definite statement. And definitive. Definitely a nice sounding band. I wonder if we have local representation on here. I doubt it. Most bands from here advertise either on SoundCloud or YouTube or for some reason MySpace. Pretty nice. So back on the topic of video games, I should get a poll going on my Facebook page. See what things the viewers would like to see, you would like to see if you would come over to Facebook and follow me. And watch all your streams. I would generally play turn-based games, character action games, maybe a first-person shooter will do that is questionable. I actually hesitate for any multiplayer games simply because I generally am bad at video games. So a live competition will probably not be particularly interesting or entertaining for you to watch unless you like seeing someone get completely owned. Although cooperative multiplayer remains an option, and the Borderlands 2 idea is exactly that. We would plan to do a co-op campaign, though that would take a while. Being the looter shooter that it is, I don't think that we can get through it. I would probably prefer Space Lords, the rebranded Raiders of the Broken Planet. If you haven't checked that out, I do advise you to. It's a pretty fun game. Third-person cooperative multiplayer. 4-on-1 asymmetrical. Pretty cool characters, cool setting. I like it. So for character action games, I would choose probably Darksiders. At least the first one. I always wanted to play through all of them. I played through the first one, and I tried the second one, although it was a bit daunting in terms of length, size. I think the third one is decent on the size front, even maybe on the shorter side, which would make it good for a stream. For a series of streams, I won't be able to beat it in one sitting. Just gonna refresh some paint into the palette. Also, the new setup did allow me to place the wet palette in a place where you can see it better. I have noticed that some of you express interest in seeing the wet palette and what goes on it. Well, sorry for the redundancy there. How did I manage to get paint on me? These lids are horrible. I regularly clean off the gunk and yet they still manage to ooze out. Well, I'm feeling fairly confident at what I'm doing for base coloring. Don't know if I will have the dexterity when it comes to the highlighting from the position that I'm in. Again, this is a position that I am not comfortable in. I don't feel I have as much control. I don't feel as immersed in the process. And so when I actually have to make some adjustments, it might fail me. I did do some touch-ups on the previous couple of models on a few streams back. So it was possible, not ideal. But again, this is probably how I will be painting from now on, so I might as well just get into the habit of it. Might be a bit too soon to speak of it, but I am really excited about my next build project after the Necromon, the ones that I have had in the works for 8 billion years, which happens to be the Orc team. I'm ready to make some very heavy conversions to the team, and I have been collecting bits and pieces and considering what could go where for maybe a couple of years now. Not to say that I have a very clear idea, but it will include a lot more cutting and gluing and gap filling and working with epoxies, putties, green stuff, that sort of thing. I think that will be exciting to watch as well as do. I am fairly excited about it. So what I'm doing right now is alternating. So I've been doing it for the whole stream, but in case you were wondering why I do it, I choose two separate sections of the model. I paint one section, and while it is dry, I paint the first layer on another section. While I paint it, the first one dries and is ready to handle another coat of paint. In this way, I don't lose time in watching paint dry. As fun as that is. And or maybe. Though this is pretty basic, so I'm hardly surprising or bringing in new information with this. However, on the off chance that it is new information to you, I just thought it deserved a mention. And there is a lovely gust of wind right now coming through the window. Very refreshing and a bit invigorating too. I have air conditioning. Maybe I should turn on air conditioning. I don't like using air conditioning for cooling. Prefer to use it for heat, as I handle heat quite a bit better than I do cold. I love being warm. Prefer being uncomfortably hot than uncomfortably cold. Which isn't saying much, but again. Basically just thoughts coming into my head. And I lay it all out for anyone who bothers to listen. This is one of the more comfortable variants of my stance. Sorry. The painting in this setup. Although my knees will probably be killing me afterwards, but it is a small price to pay. As far as my brush stroke alternation, considering how rough the surface is, how detailed the surface is, I want to avoid getting too much paint in one place, so I do not want to, at least yet, fill out the gaps with the base paint. Not as far as to obscure detail, because I am painting fairly thin. However, this is a base paint, and if it would accumulate, it would give a bit of an additional tint at the recesses, and I don't need that yet. Why I don't need it yet is because I will be using shades of a non-brown variety for some of the tinting. I want to have as clean and untainted base coat as possible, You can probably notice that this is not exactly the case anymore here, but it is still what I try for. I don't usually like dry brushing for highlighting purposes. I would prefer to use it for weathering, for when I start weathering the Necromunda gang, which will be quite a while in once I actually start painting them. However, for hair and fur, I just cannot be bothered to paint every strand individually. Even now that I have the Monument paintbrushes for detailing, the synthetic Kalinskis as they call it, even though I have them, which would technically allow me to do it, I still just don't think it would play out in my favor to engage in separate strand painting, especially if I go with a light enough approach to dry brushing. I should give a smoother finish and avoid the chalkiness as much as possible. In addition, what I plan to do is wash the surface, as in apply a wash to the surface after the initial dry brush, which the initial dry brush will be a bit heavier, and so the wash will blend the chalkiness in, or at least obscure it a bit, while still giving and maintaining highlighting. It would appear I have forgotten this guy's nose. Or is this? No, I forgot the nose straight out. Well, again, for anyone watching, when I am in the touch-ups phase and I miss the nose of this guy, please do not hesitate to remind me, or I will most likely forget. My initial idea was to paint him as the box art suggests, with black hair, but black hair would suggest that the rest of the fur would also be black, and it might create some issues with too much black saturation. It would break the cohesion factor with the other players in the team. He wouldn't look good. If it was just the hair, yes, but then again, I can't just paint the hair black unless I would like to assume that he dyes his hair, which, why would he? I really want to paint up the Yeti that comes in this team, but I fear that he will be left for a separate series of streams, as you will be seeing quite a bit of these guys and the other couple that are waiting to be primed. I just don't want to oversaturate. Do you see the mold line? If you don't, well, there is. Did I look for it? Yes, I did. Did I find it? Nope. And naturally it's one that is high on top of the character, which will make it fairly visible. Damn. Damn. So if anyone is wondering why I'm taking so long for building up a rather basic kit such as the Necromunda Goliaths, well, to avoid this. To avoid this unexpected popping up of a mold line. I think I have explicitly mentioned that the top of the model being more visible is where you should pay extra attention for any mold lines. In my defense, this ponytail was a separate piece to the head, so I may have been looking over the model before attaching the ponytail. Although I don't think that at this point any excuses will cut it, it's just sloppy and that's that. Being summer, do you guys already have any plans for vacations or trips or just some time off of whatever it is you're doing on a daily? Because I am struggling to figure out what to do. I have a humongous amount of days that have piled up, and I have to start cleaning them up, or else I would lose them at the end of the year. I want to avoid that if all possible. I just wonder. Quite honestly, I wouldn't hesitate to just take some vacation days and not really utilize them in any way other than just stay home and do some fun stuff, maybe focus on hobbies, on exercising. Every time I have done that, I end up just sleeping in an awful lot. Being out of a regular schedule actually is not particularly effective for me. I found out I need to have a tiniest bit of something that I have to do, and around it to build the things that I want to do. May just be a habit I've gotten following university and work, and before that, school. And by the way, does this work the same for you? Do you lose motivation when you're essentially left on your own devices? Or do you function better when you lift some of the restrictions in your day-to-day? At least for a little while. I'm curious on that, because most people say that they work better on a schedule, and I was always laughing at them and said, yeah, whatever. You can't tell me that it's better to be constantly busy than it is to be constantly free and fill your schedule any way you want to. But the less you have, the less you want to have, and it just creates a spiral that ends up with you being effectively a couch potato. Not that it's wrong to do it every now and again, quite the contrary. We all need a break, we all need some time off everything. But yeah, these would be the musings that inspire my rants right now. Again, as usual, I will ask of you to join in at any time that you feel comfortable, regardless if you have something to say on a topic I've raised, or if you want to bring in a new topic, or just come along, say hi, tell us what you're doing, tell us what you're up to, tell us how you're feeling. Anything at all, really. I don't bite, I don't judge. Paint, listen to some nice music while doing it, and filling the dead air with random rants based on sporadic musings, ideas, the stuff that comes to my head at any given moment. And with that said, we are done with the brown. So this guy is all browned up. Maybe I can give him, as long as I have some paint left over, because I felt like the inside of the Greaves armbands, you will correct me which one more correct to refer to, was left a little bit too transparent, so I'm just gonna go back in and cover it all up. The buckles, you might say that it is an error to cover them up with the brown. And yes, if you're going for a neat paint job, it definitely is. But I will be painting the buckles in yellow metallics. And some people say that if you lay down a warm foundation color, such as brown, your yellow metallics would look better after that. Personally, I haven't quite noticed that. However, I would be spared some detailing in terms of coverage for the yellow metallics. By doing this, it will save me from the very, very obvious errors that are highlighted by the white primer. It was an extremely workaround way to say that white primer makes your errors stand out. Then again, how are you going to learn if you didn't see your mistakes? And it also looks good, and in addition, white and black, unlike the grays, are better for understanding, for immediately seeing if you have properly primed your model. The grays are very similar to, so a deeper gray, the standard gray, usually is the exact gray that GW plastic kits come in. So actually identifying if it has covered well or not is very hard. Same thing goes for the gray, for the lighter gray primer and most resin pieces. There are very few white-ish pieces, though there are some. And white helps along with DAP if it makes any kind of sense at all. And what do you know, we will be having about a half hour. About a half hour to go into the blues. Isn't that lovely? Now, why on earth would I be getting messages this part of the evening? And the answer is that probably someone hasn't realized that I am actually streaming right now. Who that might be? Check. That was quite expected. That same person will be asking if I were streaming today, and he wasn't notified, whereas he actually was. And that's fine. He'll probably join in on the game streams, because he is not too much into the hobby part of things. Come to think of it, I think that in our whole local group, there probably are just 2 people who do their own painting, and one of them is me, so I represent half of our local gaming group's painters, if I can be called that. So, I do put paint on models by the strictest definition, or loosest. For some kind of definition, I would fall into this category, what I was trying to say. Well, I actually will put down the brown and go for the blue. And get it out. Maybe give it a good shake before. Well, I'm essentially not doing anything but poking. So to save time, I will multitask. It is weird how the shaking paint is so audible in the mic. Weird. Anyway, better it's shaken up. I'll give it a couple more shakes once, right before dipping my brush into it. The smell of barbecue coming from the neighbors definitely built my appetite up. And I'm not particularly hungry, it's just, I'd say a bit of gluttony, maybe. Smell something nice, you wanna eat something. Probably not gonna be barbecue, but I'm gonna hop over after the stream and get a bite while the video is uploading. So here's a question for anyone listening. How do you fight irregular sleep? So mostly about having difficulties falling asleep. Outside of building a regular schedule for sleep, how do you manage to cleanse your head of any, well, not nasty, but just creeping thoughts that tend to whirl inside your head and keep your consciousness awake? I have been running into that issue lately. Annoying, to say the least. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Way I figure it, just as soon as I build up an actual regularity of it, get into the habit of going to bed at the same time, and not do any things that would excite my brain, so actually just get away from the phone, mostly.
Have you heard of the men's rights movement? No. Don't order that. You're probably the last person in this room who needs any more carbs tonight.
I was about to say that this has been pretty productive tonight, but considering I've only laid down the brown on this guy, I am going to have to take my statement back instead of even uttering it aloud. Yeah, as I said, very slow. Very slow. And I have actually been painting for most of the stream. I actually don't have an explanation why I'm doing it so slow. Anyway, moving on to blue. And I will keep playing with the oaf. Simply because he has less in number and larger in size areas to paint. Meaning that if I have built up any fatigue and have lost any dexterity due to it for the evening, it would be easier and more enjoyable to paint. Strangely enough, if you have any detail work, at least for me, it would appear to be easier to do so at the start of the painting session rather than the end. That's a lovely blue, by the way. It's the standard Macroc blue, Krog, whatever. Right then, let's get into it. Oops, okay, this is not where blue is supposed to go. Again, affirming my abilities in front of all of you. This is very nice coverage. Inconsistent pigmentation has always interested me, and that it is a good idea to actually stick to a certain paint line, because even though some colors have a tendency to generally be easier or harder to apply, every particular paint line is even more specific in that way. And so if you stick consistent to it, you can sort of learn by heart. And I have been completely out of frame while doing this, which is good because I did some sloppy stuff. Yeah, highlighting these things. This posture is not gonna be easy. Oh well. This appears to have dried off, so I can apply the second coat to it straight away and forget about it. Just move on and never come back till I got the lighter tones on the palette. Is it better, but is it in frame? Yes, it would appear to be. Wow, I'm getting shaky. And these inverse bevels are probably the #1 reason for any spillage of color. Yeah, see, I just can't paint in there without spreading over. Still, that would be an easy touch-up to do. I'm not worried about it. Am I getting a bit too thick here? Maybe. Maybe. And I'm losing focus. I wonder when the day will come where I don't even need to think about being in frame or in focus, where I'm just in the habit. And actually give some good quality content. Someday would be the most probable answer to this, if I keep at it, which I intend to do. This may hit the camera a bit. Yes, it did. I was so hoping to not have hit it, but it would appear to do. Yeah. And these inverted bevels. Playing a trick on me. Nasty bevels. See what I mean? Just really have to get in there, and if I do, the paintbrush splits and I get spillage. Which is not what you want to see on stream or in your own painting environment. Never fun. Oh, this sounds nice. Previously mentioned, I have a bit of a fondness for introducing electronics to music, so for all the haters out there, well, I am not one of you. Maybe some sort of nostalgia that drives me to like this type of element. I'm really sure what it could possibly be. But a few reasons. And I also used to be quite more sparing on how much paint I spilled on the palette. We're obviously beyond that point as well. Another thing that cannot be reapplied, so here is why white primer highlights any mistakes or any misses that you may have made. Not being in frame does not help me to illustrate this topic. Point in this case. I guess I'm getting tired today. Won't be putting on too much more paint. Correcting a pool as I feel my head evaporate, looking at the waves. I tell my body to separate. Yeah, I'm just being horrible at this point. Still though, rather decent coverage, so I don't hate that. Not particularly in love with it either. even see what I'm doing from this angle? Probably not. Maybe a thicker handle might help. I use a thicker, more girthy painting handle. I would avoid some of the shakiness in my hand. Or of course not drinking so much coffee. But nah, gotta be the handle, right? Couldn't possibly have drunk too much coffee. Yeah, considering that I'll be doing some more detailing here, my brush is somewhat too moist. Paint is a bit too runny. Let's see how this would work out. So we'll be starting on the belt. Yeah, drying off a bit of it. Did do the trick, which is what I did. Did not announce it. But now you know. The secret. Alright. And let's go to the other side. Again, couldn't see where my brush is. I have a bit of a problem with depth of vision, and there aren't too many actual aspects of life where this comes to actually affect me, but painting happens to be one of them. It's not impossible to work around, as a matter of fact. It's barely a nuisance at all, but it does lead to some less desired effects that simply require additional touch-ups. Right, so how the hell do I get in there? There we go. That would be the angle to attack this from. Do you see it? You do. Here though, I'm going to have to angle the brush. I failed, and I'm hitting the light. Lovely. I am just making so much extra work for myself right now. Do you know what the best part of this is? I'm going to have to do it again. Isn't that just lovely? This, of course, could have been avoided if I were to have applied common sense and started painting in sub-assemblies. However, obviously, I did not. So instead of making my life easier for me, I am instead adding to the challenge. And while I wouldn't plea for a challenge, I am certainly not in need of one right now. That being said, we are making decent-ish progress on this build. Not getting too much spillage overall, which is nice. I wanted to keep the buckles as wide as possible so that I wouldn't forget their existence when I come in with the metallics. A couple of those buttons or buckles or whatever they are, they remain obscured by the paint. Yeah, with sub-assemblies, this whole thing would have been a bajillion times easier. Thankfully, the Necromunda Goliath gang that I'm building right now is going to be in sub-assemblies. And although I would like to credit this to this particular experience as well as many others, the reason for the sub-assemblies is actually gameplay related, and that I would like to have the arms detachable so I can properly represent the loadouts my gang. And something that struck me as a problem for the Goliaths is, as I was saying on previous streams, I actually would like to experiment with different skin tones. And well, that seemed like a good idea at the time of me saying it. Occurred to me today that if I were to do so, I would limit the possible loadouts for particular gangers. So if I were to go with a pale skin tone, I would have to pick out a particular set of weapons that would be used by the guy with the pale skin tone and would not be able to be used by the guy with a darker skin tone simply because his arms would not match his overall skin tone. And I said skin tone about 55 times in the last 3 sentences. But I believe I made my point come across. So this will be an additional thing I'll try to remember, and I would actually like to read the rules of the game before before I start painting, so that I can decide what kind of gear goes onto which ganger so that I don't lock myself out of variety. And I think that would be it from me for tonight. I would push a bit more, but seeing as how chat is more or less dormant, I don't think that there will be a particular need. I would rather focus getting this on other platforms as soon as possible and gather up my energy for tomorrow's build stream and the inevitable work day that will come before stream. So what we did today is work exclusively on the Ulf. We got all the brown on, and we got on about a quarter-ish of the blue. The next time I will finish the blue on the Ulf, get through the blue on the lineman for this jacked up dude is actually just a lineman. I'll get the blue down on him, and then we will have some Screaming Skull to apply to the claws and to his pendant. Following that, if we have time, we will get started on the ever so lovely metallics, which there doesn't seem to be too much, but we'll see how they'll go. I still haven't figured out a good brush to use. My synthetics are kind of clunky. I really wanna ruin my synthetic Belinsky's with metallics. Suppose I'll just use the usual one. Have a bit of a struggle with it. I'd watch me and get a laugh out of it, at the very least. I'd be okay with that. So yeah, I'll just be having this last smoke and have my last rumblings for today. Let's see, can I try and estimate how many more regular streams it would take to finish up these two guys? Now I'm gonna say at least, so about two more streams for the base colors. I won't be able to do all the blue and the metallics in one stream. I don't think so unless I run light. So that would be 2 for that. At least. So in one stream I should be able to get all the dry brushing and shading done. Then highlighting the stream will take at least one stream. Highlighting the blue and gray should be fairly quick. And then highlighting the metallics quite a bit. The way I see it, I might actually have to double up on the painting streams just to get things done, keep on target. I really didn't want to do that. Would I benefit from raising my work platform even higher? Might become unstable. How much taller would I need it to be? Yeah, comfortable painting stance. I don't know. I don't know. Or maybe get a lower chair. Maybe that would help. Maybe not. Because my knees are already bent. That's also impacting the speed of me painting. Not the bending at the knees, but the paint station as I have it set up right now. Somewhat uncomfortable. Or I can simply zoom out the camera, or just lift it up. But then the palette would become all smudgy. Well, food for thought anyway. And with this drink of water, I will tell you that this has been a fun stream for me. It has been the first one where I had to fill out the entire content with personal ramblings. If you were lurking here, I'm going to thank you for joining me. For anyone that will be watching on Twitch, again, on Twitch and on YouTube, thank you for watching. Don't hesitate to use the comments section to let me know on any of the topics I raised. I could not list them right now off the top of my head, but you're more than welcome to do so. And I will be back probably tomorrow with a build stream for the Goliaths, the Necromunda. Thank you all for bearing with me for 2.5 hours of me incohesively rambling and ranting on about random stuff and getting some paint on models. And I will be seeing you next time. Until then, love what you do what you love, and have a lovely rest of your evening. Bye bye now.